1947 gentleman's agreement, he's kicked out. But it is now 1958. But there's a slight problem. This is set before World War II. It's 1939, it's 1940. So, what's the deal here? Well, one of the things I always push is when you watch a film, even if it's set in a period long ago, it's giving you insight into the time in which you watch that. So when Steven Spielberg made Lincoln in 2013, a film about 1864 and 1865, and about Lincoln's fight in Congress to try and get these amendments passed, these constitutional amendments, it's telling us just as much about 2013 and our own dysfunctional Congress. This film, made in 1958, set in 1940, is dealing with the fact that it is now time that Jews be accepted in a very different way than ever before. And in fact, when those church bells are ringing, we know that he is entering Christian America. And the filmmaker has us bring that bus. Did you notice as the bus was coming in where it came between? Father and daughter are sitting at the table, and that bus comes between them. And when he gets off the bus, how many people are on the bus? It's him. But he's carrying how many bags? So the Jew doesn't know how long he's staying. Bottom line. And he gets off the bus and he meets Mr. Plowman, and we're going to take a little walk. And this one's from 1840, and that one's from 1736. And for all we know, this entire town came off the Mayflower. You, Jew, are the outsider in this town. You do not belong. Anyone else, I'd invite them for turkey. But you wouldn't get on that bus, would you? And as they get to the end of that town square, there's a long shot. You see the two men approaching the cemetery. Did you notice what is keeping them from coming into the cemetery? A fence. A fence that's keeping the Jew out. And he tells them that generations of plowmen are buried in that cemetery. And he then gives us a close shot of the two men with the fence looking in, and then a reverse shot of them looking in. And what do you see in the corner of that cemetery? A nice size cross. No Jews allowed. But then the dilemma. And by the way, as they're walking back, if you remember, there's the choir singing. So if you didn't hear the church bells, get it, folks. What's he going to do? And in the end, he's a good Christian American. He has no choice. It is 1958. It is time to accept the Jew. Not only to accept him, but he invites him for what? The American feast. Yeah. Guess who's coming for dinner? That's where we're at. And we see it in cinema. The next year, The Diary of Anne Frank is made. The year after that, Exodus. Suddenly Israel is on the screen. And the studios didn't want to make Exodus. And it's only through the brother of Otto Preminger sort of working out a deal with Louis B. Mayer that the film ever gets made. Judgment at Nuremberg the next year. Jews are finally comfortable in America. We see it. We are feeling it. We see it in Congress. We see it on the court. We see it in everyday life. We see those barriers that have kept us out of the best dental, medical, and other professional schools being dropped. We have made it. And films show that through the 60s. And then there's a little period of, well, we're not so sure about our newfound place in America, so we see lots of films for 2 decades making fun of ourselves. as we try and find our place here. In 1990, a filmmaker, one of my favorites, Barry Levinson, comes forward and makes a movie called Avalon. I show it to you because it's an important moment in American film history and in American Jewish history. Because what is Levinson struggling with? He's struggling with the Jewish immigrant now seeing his children and his grandchildren and what is happening to the American Jewish family. In the scene I'd like to show you, the matriarch has just learned that her brother has survived the Shoah. And he's being reunited with her in Baltimore. Let's take a look at Avalon. Again, note the images.
Byliśmy 3 miesiące w obozie koncentracyjnym. To było straszne. Nie wiem, jak to się stało, że ja przeżyłam. Zupełnie piekło na ziemi. Później przyszło wyzwolenie. Po wyzwoleniu 3 lata byliśmy w obozie dla uchodźców.
Super, Sie gekommen in ein gutes Land an.
Mój mąż mówi, że przyjechałeś do pięknego kraju. Do pięknego kraju przyjechałeś. Będzie ci tu dobrze, masz piękną rodzinę. Ale powiedz mi, kochanie, kto się został z rodziny? Czy nikt się nie został?
Nikt się nie został. Tylko ja tu chyba był przeznaczony.
Zejdź z całej rodziny, nikt nie został. I don't know exactly what you're saying.
I'm telling him that the concentration
Could be that. Right? Must have been a refugee camp.
No, I don't think that she was in a concentration camp. I think what I got was that her husband died in the war.
No, I didn't get that.
It must be she would not have had that child in a concentration camp. I think he met her in the refugee camp.
that woman survived a concentration camp as a child. Come on, gives me the chills.
I don't think that she was in a concentration camp. I got that they met in the refugee camp. Her husband.
The refugee camp was really recently, I guess. 6.
No. Well, that's there.
See, there's nothing else to do with it. It's done. That's the problem with mom planes. There's nothing left to even look at. It doesn't fly. It'll never fly. We can throw it off a building and launch it around. Cliffy.
Clinton started it. Whoever they were. And now we all have to give thanks. We get a turkey and Casey should be here any minute. I'm hungry. You should wait for Gabriel. You should wait for Gabriel. Every year we have to look at the same thing. We can't let the turkey with us again.
Students, cut the turkey.
You started it up.
Come on.
We go. We were hungry. The kids wanted to eat. We were ready. We couldn't wait.
Come on, flesh and blood, you couldn't wait. You cut the turkey. That's it. That's the last day before for Thanksgiving.
Come here, Robert.
Get with.
Same thing over here. You wait for him and he shows up late, and then we cut the turkey.
Cut the turkey. You live miles from nowhere. It's too far for God's sake. Too far for relatives. You do relatives. The relatives that are near you is who you paid for.
Let's not make an issue
No, 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 wait. That's what happens when you get to be old. You got about these songs, you don't even wait for the bottom to come before you cut the turkey. The hell with you, man.
Jews making a good living has nothing to do with when they cut the turkey. Nothing.
If you live in Avalon, nobody is. You wait for everybody before you eat, much less cut the turkey without a holiday. You move on here to the suburbs, and you think it doesn't matter anymore.
The young ones are hungry. They carry on. They make the promotion. What do you want to do? Stand out ceremony with the family?
There's always young ones. There's always young ones that are home and they carry on and they want to eat. They got to wait till every relative is there before the turkey's cooked. I said enough.
Every year I would arrive late for my brother's Thanksgiving dinner. After watching this, I have been prompt each and So, the very first thing we see, what do we see? What's the first image in the sequence? A train. And what do we think of, some of us, when we see a train? It brings up memories and thoughts of the Shoah. Trains were used to deport Jews. But this train is doing what? Not only is it bringing family together, but it is bringing a survivor of the Shoah together with his American family. In America, trains do one thing and one thing only. They are used to bring people together. They are not used to push people apart. This is the message that Levinson wants us to get. It's a question. We're now in the 1990s. What is it to be a Jew in America? What have we gained here? We've gained prosperity, we've gained wealth, we've gained acceptance. America's a great country. It has welcomed us. Now what? Well, the Holocaust lingers. It's an issue, it's a question, it's something that wasn't talked about. And what Levinson shows in that next scene, and some of you were straining to hear the words, You didn't get it because they were speaking in a foreign language. If you knew Polish and Yiddish and Russian, you got it. But if you knew those languages, chances are you yourself had experienced it. Like those people in the room. No translation is given by Levinson. He doesn't want the audience out there who did not experience it not to be able to follow. Just like the two women in the kitchen. Was she born in a camp, refugee camp? How did she live? What are they doing while they're having that discussion? Anybody remember? What? They're making the turkey. They're basting the turkey. And as they say the word concentration camp, what are they doing with that turkey? Where? With a close-up of the oven. So this is a master filmmaker. He wants us to understand that in America, ovens are used for only one thing, and that is to prepare the feast. Not what they did in Europe with us. Powerful, powerful images telling a story. Next scene, the children are playing. We have the child of survivors playing with the other kids. She's with them at the beginning of that scene. By the end, as we see the swastika burning on that Messerschmitt plane, she is separate. She doesn't quite fit. Different experiences, different memories. Their screams of joy are her screams of memory. And finally, that great last scene. I actually once saw Lou Jacoby on 57th Street. I walked up to him and I said to him, I thought I was being very smart, "So you cut the turkey, Lou?" And he looked at me and he said, "Get away from me, kid." That's it. Family and tradition. Is this a Jewish tradition? Well, there's nothing in the Talmud to the best of my knowledge, Rabbi. But it is family tradition, and tradition, as we've reached this point in our lives in America, is being broken. And Levinson is telling us, as we see the car go off into the distance, this family never to be the same, that tradition needs to be maintained. That is his message. That's what's happened to American Jewry. Well, over the next 30 years, lots of different films are being made. Our time is running out. I just want to finish with one short clip. One of the key issues for us is, how much do we fit in? How willing are we to speak out? How willing are we as Jews in America to take on causes? We're totally comfortable. Or maybe we're not. So in this scene, Levinson returns to Baltimore 9 years later. This time it's a continuation of his family's story, and that was his family. Now we're in the 50s, it's 1954. The film begins on Rosh Hashanah in 54 and it ends on Rosh Hashanah in 55. And at the beginning of the film, we see the young boys outside of a swim club, and there is a big sign that says, "No dogs, Jews, or coloreds." They return to the swim club 1 year later, and remember, it's 1954. But this is not a film made in 1954, it's a film made at the turn of the 21st century. The film is called Liberty Heights. It's the 21st century. We no longer need to stand behind. And the filmmakers in Hollywood, and it's still an industry largely run by Jews, are stepping forward. They're comfortable as Jews. They're making films that deal with important Jewish subjects. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be Jewish, and it's also a time that we need not to be quiet if we have issues with what's going on around us. Thank you so much.
Of this crowd, and this Acharon Chaviv is the last one for me as far as having the most dear, the most wonderful presentation. This was absolutely terrific. I think we all agree with that. And any questions about anything? This group? Yes.
Was the film ever made of Philip Roth's Plot Against America?
No. There is a mini-series called Man in a High Tower that takes some of the ideas behind it. No. A number of Roth's books have been adapted, famously, Goodbye Columbus, but somehow film has not been very successful. Goodbye Columbus worked, but other films that have been adaptations have not been particularly good in general. It's too bad. It's one of those situations where the novel just can't be surpassed by cinema. Please.
I find that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes.
I have many Gentile friends who go to the movies with me a lot, and they have no clue about the good German. Who is this? It was Mengele. They had no clue. They never heard of him. Norman, they slept through it. They didn't get it, that this was a universal. It happened to be our story, but it was universal. They don't get it. Now there are a lot of Israeli producers and directors that are coming out, and I wonder how that's going to play in America.
Well, my favorite experience was watching a Woody Allen film in Central Florida. And I'm sitting there, and at one point I just started laughing. And nobody's laughing. 10 minutes go by, and everyone is just breaking up, and I don't know what's so funny. So some filmmakers do, manage to attract that. There are films. There's a new film coming out next Friday called The Wedding Plan, made by an ultra-Orthodox Israeli woman.
Is that the wedding now?
No, it's called The Wedding Plan. And it's about an Orthodox woman who wants to get married, and all of the matches that have been set up for her just don't work. The big question is, will this work for a broad audience? You know what? Israeli films are made for an Israeli audience. American films are made for an American audience. What has happened, though, with Jewish stories in American cinema is that they become mainstream. We just think of our language. English language today is so chock full of Yiddishisms. I open up the word of the day, and like every 30 days I get a Yiddish word that's the English word of the day. So we become mainstream, and it's your responsibility when the film is over to sit with your non-Jewish friends and say, well, I want you to know this and this and this.
I was at a film festival in Palm Springs, and we saw a film about Stefan Zweig.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a commentator, it was a wonderful film, there was a commentator after who was discussing it, and he didn't say one word about the Holocaust. And my Jewish friend says, don't say anything, don't say anything. But that's who I am.
I hope you did.
You bet I did. I started to say, you know, when you start something with all due respect, and then I went to the judge. I said, you missed the entire point of this film.
Well, the beauty is that living in today's world, in this country,
I can.
we can.
Right.
Yes?
I've heard that anti-Semitism is spreading all over Europe and in America, in the colleges, and especially in the liberal institutions. And the professors are anti-Israel and they are very anti-Semitic. I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah, that's a lecture in itself, but I can just tell you, I have some friends. One of them is a professor at the University of Illinois in Champaign, and he heads a group of scholars about Israel who are involved in working with different associations like the Modern Languages Association to try and raise that discussion and talk about the fact that BDS is not a liberal cause. It's an anti, you are cutting down the discussion. So there are efforts being made. It's a problem. It's a problem.
It's
This
an increasing
whole,
problem.
Anti-Israel fervor that's taken over our college campuses.
Wow.
Bob.
Steven Spielberg, Woody Allen, who are other famous current?
Well, Paul Mazursky was a wonderful director, just passed away a couple of years ago. Next Up, Greenwich Village, Unmarried Woman. Steven Spielberg has come forward. What's the name of the fellow who does Jewish, the song, the Hanukkah song? Adam Sandler, unabashed, totally comfortable as a Jew. You don't remember the Zohan movie?
Yes.
Yeah, so he plays the part of an Israeli Mossad agent who falls in love with a Palestinian woman. There are lots of filmmakers who are stepping forward. You have films like Defiance. You have films like the recent film about Deborah Lipstadt. So movie makers are coming forward and saying, about the Holocaust denial trial. Movie makers are coming forward and saying, we are ready to deal with important issues and we're not afraid of them.
Briefly, other than the producing aspect in the early 30s, could you draw is there a parallel between the African American experience with black like the need to guess who's coming to dinner and now the figures? They're becoming the mainstream too.
Okay, it's a great question. There were into World War II, there were a number of ethnic movie productions. So there was a Yiddish cinema, largely geared for a Yiddish-speaking immigrant audience. There was an a Ukrainian cinema. There was an Italian cinema. There was a black cinema. And finally, in the 60s, when you begin to have some black filmmakers stepping forward and making mainstream films, most famously, of course, recently, Spike Lee sort of stands out among them. He's not making films just for African Americans, he's making films for all of America. So early on, there were these ethnic movie, and there were certain theaters in the Metropolitan New York Metropolitan New York area. One week they would have a Yiddish film, the next week they would have a Russian film, the next week they would have an Italian film. So it was known as the ethnic movie houses, some of these art houses. But now a lot of these filmmakers have become mainstream. And their movies are being picked up by major film distributors. Early on, Israeli movies would only be seen in certain Jewish neighborhoods or at JCCs. Today, companies like United Artists and Sony are buying the rights to these films, and they're being, I was in Edgewater last night going to the movies, and there was Norman playing, it's an Israeli movie, playing in a major theater. So, yes?
With the change in the structure of the film industry, where everybody seems to be making a movie, Netflix, whatever, and viewers have therefore more choice. Is there a change in the communication? Are viewers just viewing the films they already agree with? So you're not, in the old days it seems like messages, everybody must have seen the same movies more or less, whereas now people get to just choose the avenue of movie.
There's certainly many more choices, but so for instance, you are now seeing, we'll talk specifically Jewish, you are now seeing Jewish themes typically included in these series. So you see a film about a transsexual, and all of a sudden, who is the transsexual? He's a Jew. You're seeing Homeland, and you see, you know, one of the major characters saying Kaddish on screen. So you're seeing it's diversified, it's wide open. So I think it's exciting. You know, Amazon Studios and Netflix now making movies, and all of these things, and the Israeli film industry is so strong and powerful. Those films being shown here. Are they being directed to specific audiences? I think, you know, yes, there is a Jewish channel, and there's an Israeli channel, and there's a Russian channel, but the bottom line is a lot of these films get beyond those specific ethnic groups. I think we have time, what, for one or two more, or that's it?
I want to know about the background of the non-Jewish movie. What's that? Yes. What made him come forward like that? What was his background?